This is a Triple J podcast.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Science with Dr. Karl. My name is Lucy Smith. It is so good to be back with you. And I don't know, maybe there's something in the weather, but this week we had a lot of questions about temperature, about maintaining your core temperature and keeping yourself warm, about the cold temperature influencing achy joints, and also why the temperature could be the same in a pool and outside, and yet the pool is colder. We get into all of that, plus Dr. Karl is going to tell you his favourite story that triggers his science memory. Let's get into it. Karl, what did I miss? What's something that's been happening in the science world in the last week that I should be across?
Well, I did a bit of a follow-up on dogs and their owners.
Mm-hmm.
And
because we got that question about dogs who look or look like their owners, right?
Yeah, so I did a bit of deep diving, not in Facebook, not on YouTube, which has good stuff on it, but I went into Google Scholar. Dogs do look like their owners. They look like them and can have similar personalities, but it's not as simple as that. So if you just start off with a whole bunch of pictures of dogs and a bunch of pictures of owners, an outsider can match them and say, oh, that dog belongs to that person. And so in some cases, you've got a similarity. So this is weird. Women who have short hair prefer a dog that's got short ears.
Oh.
Yeah, exactly. And if they've got long hair, they prefer dogs with long ears on average. So that kind of makes sense. But then next bit also makes sense. If the dog and the owner are both slightly overweight, they prefer each other. That kind of makes sense. But this bit does not make sense. If you get a picture of owners, so only the eyeballs, nothing above the forehead, nothing below the cheekbones, only the eyes. And you get the eyes of the dog and the eyes of the owner, outsiders can match them together. What
Really?
the heck's, yeah. So there must be something about the eyes as part of why they link together. Certainly, shy owners will have dogs that are nervous around strangers, and people who have got dogs that are classified as dangerous, like the pit bulls, they're higher on traits like sensation-seeking and psychopathy. And if you're an anxious person and you're thinking, I'm at the bus stop and everybody's here and the bus timetable says it's going to come and the app says it's going to come, but I'm still nervous, then you'll put that onto your dog. So that kind of makes sense.
It does make sense. And with the eyes, do you think it is pets mimicking their owners? Is it the emotion in the eyes or actually how they look?
Hard to tell because we humans have mirror neurons. So if we're having a cup of tea, which we do every day, every time in Trajay, and then you lean forward, without even thinking about it, I'll automatically lean forward. And if you lean back, I'll lean back. We're sort of mirroring each other. And those mirror neurons are strong in humans, but much, much weaker in dogs. So we do understand a few things, but there's still mysteries.
So
there's always mysteries.
Poppy in Nam. Poppy, me love, what's your question?
Hi, this one's a bit more philosophical, but do you think math is a human construct we created to understand our universe? Or do you think math is a natural feature of the universe that humans just happen to have discovered?
This would be a good question for our maths expert, Dr. Karl, that we've had on before. What do you reckon?
I've actually asked this, I've had this asked on air, and I've gone to the clever people in maths, and the overall average opinion is that on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, they're pretty sure that we invented mathematics. And on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, mathematics exists and we're just discovering it. And on Sundays, they don't know. So you're in the middle there of a very deep philosophical question, and we still, once again, don't have the answer to that, Dr. Poppy. Are you a mathematician?
No, not even slightly. I haven't done maths since year 10 and I was in Gen Ed, but I'm generally just curious.
Now, if you do happen to run across a mathematician, you should always ask them two questions. The first one is, what is your favourite equation or identity? And some of them will say, Pythagoras, because it's so simple and elegant. A squared plus B squared is C squared. If they deal with dynamic things, they might go for Navier-Stokes. They might go for the Euler equation. And I've actually met a woman who had, two women, who have had equations tattooed on their bodies because they love them so much. And then the second question you ask them is, what is your Erdős number? And the lower it is, the better. So there you are, a handy hint for breaking the ice with a mathematician.
We've actually met a mathematician, Tom Crawford, who had all of his favourite equations tattooed onto him, didn't he?
And his QR code. Oh, my God, man.
Yeah, he's living in the future. Poppy, thank you so much for your question.
Thank you, Dr. Poppy.
Thank you.
Do you think when we are seeing maths in the universe, it's just coincidence, Dr. Karl? It's applying patterns to what we already know? Or is that deeping it even further?
I'll try and I'll give you a simple answer. It should take 1 minute. Our universe that we have today, our world where we use mobile phones and computers, that all came on the 26th of February, 1896, when a physicist accidentally put some uranium powder on photographic plates, and an unknown radiation fogged the plates. And from that unknown radiation, we now know how the sun works, electronics works, and so forth. And we've got a few more of these mysteries to come along, which are the missing dark matter, the dark energy, the black holes, and the missing dimensions. And almost certainly our lives will be changed in such a huge way when we break the next big physics mystery. So you'll say to your niece Jacinta at the another half century or so, hey Jacinta, stop using feeding dark matter in the black hole to do anti-gravity and come in and have lunch. Because we'll still have lunch, we'll still be human, but the technologies and our interactions with the world will be so different when we have the next big breakthrough.
All right. Right now we've got Flynn in Devonport. Now, Flynn, you got a question about bumblebees.
Yeah, hey doctors, I do. So I've heard that according to the laws of physics, the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly, yet it does. And I'm just wondering how that works. Like, are the laws of physics wrong, or is the bumblebee some type of mythical creature?
Almost certainly some of the laws of... okay. When I was studying obstetrics and gynecology, right at the beginning they told me that the half-life of a truth in obstetrics and gynecology is about 40 years, which means that if you go to the obstetrics and gynecology books of 40 years ago and look them up, half the things they tell you we don't do anymore. But in physics, the half-life is much longer. Like once things are true in physics, they're pretty true, and we just discover them to be a smaller subset of something bigger. And of course, in mathematics, once something is true, it's true forever. Getting back to physics, our knowledge of how things fly is really complicated. I've actually done a podcast on this, on Shirtloads of Science with Dr. Graham Wild from the Australian Defence Forces, and he pointed out to me that everything I thought about how we think we fly is wrong. Originally, I thought it was the Bernoulli effect, where the wing is curved on top, so the air has to go faster on the top, and then somehow it magically knows how to meet up at the back, and then that creates less pressure. Firstly, how can a paper aeroplane fly, because they don't have a curved top? And then secondly, how does the wind know to join up? Then we went into the Cutter-Jankowski effect, and I thought I knew it, and then angle of attack. And then finally, I've realised that it's all wrong, so I'm doing another podcast with him this week, but there's already one there. So the point is, understanding how things fly, we've only just recently to understand how aeroplanes fly. In the 1930s, our knowledge was so much less, and people just did the straight flappity, and they didn't take account of the turbulence created by the downward movement of the wing at the front and the back of the wing. So it wasn't that the laws of physics were wrong, it was that our understanding was wrong. So with our understanding now of how aeroplanes fly and birds fly, we can explain it, but it's not something you can do easily, so we'll be doing a little demo on air as well. Does that make you feel better?
Cool. Yep, absolutely.
Dan in Melbourne has said, no way Flynn hitting us with the B movie quote. Flynn, excellent work.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Flynn.
If you've got a question off the back of a movie, let me know. 0439 757 555. We've got Bonnie in Meanjin, Brisbane. Hey, Bonnie, what do you want to know?
Hello, doctors. It's an absolute honour to talk to you both. We've just had our first cold day in Brisbane this year, and we're suffering from joint pain. I was wondering, why do the joints in my fingers ache now that it's finally getting cold?
Dr. Karl.
Right, and do they, after a few days, does the pain lessen after a few days?
Yes, it's only when it's cold, which is very rare here.
Yeah, but suppose it goes from warm to cold, so in that transition you feel the pain, but then when it stays cold, do you still have the pain for as long as it's cold, or does the pain go away?
As long as it's cold.
Okay, right. So one explanation, which was that it took a while for the pressure to work its way through to the joints that one is plain wrong, because once it's cold, then you've got that pain coming up. So one thing that does happen is that in your joints, you've got something called synovial fluid, which is incredibly smooth. And in general, your joints are good for 60, 70 years, way beyond you can have babies. And in colder temperatures, because some of the cold does get through your skin, the fluid can thicken. And if you've got sort of marginal joints, it can make them feel stiffer and more difficult to move. By marginal, I mean that we've only been evolved to survive for 20 years and have babies enough that you're on your own. And so you're sort of in that evolution doesn't love you anymore. Another thing that can happen is that you can have muscle stiffness. The cold weather can make the muscles tense up, and then that reduces your mobility, increases pain a little bit. But we don't fully understand it. Oh, there is a third factor, the behavioural effect, which is that you tend to move less in cold weather. You won't go for a swim, so you end up with stiffer joints, and you're not moving the synovial fluid around as much. So do you find that having warmer clothing or layered clothing or gentle moving or stretching helps?
Yeah, generally the warmer the body is, the better it is. So first thing in the morning, obviously stiff, we've been sitting still. But yeah, as you get going throughout the day, it will ease, but never fully goes away.
And do you have to go for anti-inflammatory medications like aspirin or the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, or it's not that bad?
Well, to be honest, I've just turned 36. This is my first time with joint pain, and yesterday was our first cold day in Brisbane, so it's all new to me.
Oh, by a cold day, you mean it was below 20 or something?
It was 22 yesterday, but that's freezing. I had to put on a cardigan.
Oh, I fully appreciate it. Look, can we organise that we send a care package up to everybody in Brisbane, Dr. Lucy?
Thank you.
You're being facetious, Dr. Karl.
Okay, I'm being facetious. I'm lying. Sorry. That was a lie. Sorry.
Got Ethan in Frankston. Ethan, what do you want to know?
G'day. I was wondering, why is it that you can be outside in a nice, let's say balmy 22. For those of us in Melbourne, that's a balmy 22. And then, take a dip in a pool and they say, it's like, oh, it's a heated pool. It's 20 degrees, 22 degrees. And why is the pool so much colder than the air outside?
Even though they're the same temperature.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, imagine that you're getting up in the morning and you get out of bed and you put your feet on the carpet, which are, say, 15 degrees C, and they feel perfectly fine. And then you walk with your little footsies into the bathroom and you walk on the tiles, which are also at a temperature of 15 degrees C, but suddenly they feel a lot colder. And that's because the carpet is a good insulator, which also means that it's a bad conductor of electricity. So the heat doesn't travel well through it for various reasons. But the tile is the opposite. It's a bad insulator but a good conductor of electricity. So your skin is, say, at 15 degrees C, or say 20 degrees C, and the heat starts flowing. On the carpet, the heat does not flow. On the tile, it does. Same thing with the difference between air and water. Air is a good insulator and water is not. Water conducts heat really well. And so, in fact, with double glazing window, which everybody in Australia should have, they don't use air because that's a moderately good insulator. They use an even better insulator called argon, which is a gas that makes up 1% of the Earth's atmosphere. Does that kind of help? What you're thinking?
That was my rudimentary science knowledge from high school is, everything's kind of entropy, heat moves from hot places to cold places to heat it up. And then, if you're saying that water conducts heat better, you're more likely you will lose more heat being in water than being in air.
Yeah, now here's a public service announcement. Next time you happen to fall into really cold water, like the Antarctic or something like that, don't try to keep warm by muscular activity. On one hand, you will generate a small amount of heat, but on the other hand, you're exposing more skin and you're going to lose heat. The best thing you can do if you're in really cold water is curl yourself up into a ball and hope that somebody comes and gets you. This has been a Triple J public service announcement.
Good to know. Thanks, Ethan.
Thank you.
All right, we've got Casey in Old Bar, New South Wales. Casey, you've noticed something with your cat. What's going on?
Hi, guys.
So not my cat, my mother-in-law's cat, but they've found that they own an infrared sauna. And every time they get in the infrared sauna, if she is around, her name's Crosby, she'll meow and carry on and scratch at the door of the infrared sauna until she's allowed in. And they also have one of those like infrared face lights, and she will rub herself silly all over their faces and purr like crazy. Why do you think she's so obsessed with the infrared light?
The cat likes heat. And the trouble with a regular sauna is often there's moisture which interferes with the just plain old heat. Like, I'm convinced sometimes that cats don't have bones, but they've just sort of got liquidy stuff inside and they can sort of flow around corners. And you see a cat lying in the sun and it just seems to shrink and spread out the surface area. So it's just going for the heat. Now, just a bit of background. Heat is like light in the sense that it is electromagnetic radiation coming from the sun. But while we have specialised sensors for visible light, we don't have them for heat. We've got very coarse ones. So with light, I can look across a room and see that there's Tim Tam or some delicious chocolatey food item sitting on a plate, and right next to it is a boring salad. You know, I'm being a bit unfair. But with heat, we haven't got that fine discrimination. Roughly half of the energy coming from the sun that makes it through the atmosphere is heat, and the other half is light. And so in the old days when you had light bulbs, they were actually heat bulbs, and about 90% was light and about 10% was heat, whereas now it's more the other way around. So they've got special LEDs that are configured just to pump it out in infrared, and they do a good job of it. I'm just putting it down to the cat just like to feel warm and relax. That's a pretty weak answer, isn't it, Dr. Lucy?
Potentially. I'm not sure. And I feel like I've seen this before, that they are attracted to that red, that infrared colour. Casey, so jury's out on this one, but keep us updated, I guess.
Thank you.
She's obsessed. We've got Jacina here. Jacina, what's your question?
Hi, doctors. I was just wondering why it is when we wake up in the middle of the night and it takes us forever to get back to sleep. Yeah, when our alarm goes off, we can almost instantaneously fall back asleep.
Ah. Now, there was a movie called A Bridge Too Far or something about the swapping of prisoners or during the Cold War, which was a war between the Soviet Union and America, and they're going to swap the prisoners on a bridge. But anyway, the FBI at the very beginning of the movie, they come along and they bust this guy whom they know for sure is a evil Russian spy. And he's really relaxed, and he just sort of gradually puts away his paints, and there's some secrets there that they don't notice. But he's really relaxed. They say, "You're really relaxed. You're not anxious at all as we're arresting you." And he said, "Would it change what happens to me if I was anxious?" And they say, "No." And he said, "Well, why should I waste time being anxious?" So we don't have that mental purity where we could wake up in the middle of the night and say, "I'm awake, okay, I'll go back to sleep." But instead we go through a bit of a spike in stress hormones with being awake. You think, "Oh my God, I hope I can fall asleep." And the moment you think that, you think, "But if I can't go to sleep, think I might be awake and not get enough sleep in the morning." And you get that little spike in stress hormones. So during the night, your brain might interpret it as maybe it's morning and start shifting you into the daytime mode, and you begin thinking and worrying, and off you go with this, alertness promoting hormones. But it might turn out that when the alarm wakes you up, if you haven't woken up normally, that's because you're in a deep sleep because, the sun's up and all that sort of stuff. And so you're actually woken up when you're in really deep sleep, and by the law of maximum convenience, if you were to get up and walk around, you'd feel really groggy for a while. I'm noticing this with babies. You're feeling, if you wake them up too early, they just don't feel good. And your body wants to fall asleep, so you finish that cycle, so you fall asleep instantly. It's a bit unfair that our society robs us of our sleep, because you should actually be able to wake up rested every morning and bound out of bed singing songs from your favourite musical.
I know. Thanks, Jacina.
No worries. Thanks for that.
Thank you.
And we've got Baden in Melbourne. Now, Baden, you actually won a copy of Science with Dr. Karl, or with Dr. Karl's book, A Periodic Tale, because you gave us a great question on the show. Baden, you kind of have a question off the back of reading it. What's going on?
Hey, doctors. Yes, so I saw in your book, Dr. Karl, that you mentioned that, I'm not a genius, I'm not a great scientist, blah, blah, blah. You're being a bit harsh on yourself, but what you did say you were good at is memorizing stories to remember science facts. So I wanted to ask what your favourite story was.
Okay, well, look, firstly, I'm definitely not a genius. My IQ is 110 in there with 2/3 of the population who are between 85 and 115. And when I gave a lecture last week or just a few days ago, I was introduced by a guy who not only does the cryptic crossword, but only the cryptic crossword on Fridays when David Astle does it. And the other ones are too easy for him. Oh, my
Really?
God. Okay, this is a god who levitates when he feels like it. Getting back to favourite stories. So this ties in with this thing of it's not the answer, it's the question. Once you've got a question formulated, once somebody's looked at the world and come up with a question, you need to apply the two essential things, which are scientists wearing lab coats and coffee. And then sooner or later, you'll get the answer, right, given enough time. But coming up with a question is a good thing. And so here comes my favourite story. So, Ben, have you looked down an ordinary microscope like you have at high school? And if you notice that when you look down, you see all this fuzzy stuff sort of moving around and it's jittering, and you think, I don't want to see that, and you change the focus, and suddenly you can see the hair or the red blood cell or whatever you want to look at?
Yeah.
Okay, so in 1905... which was Einstein's golden year, where he wrote 5 papers, each one of which would have won a Nobel Prize. He looked down a microscope, and he saw this stuff jittering around, and instead of going, no, they're showing me this human hair, he said, what is jittering around and why? And he then, in a very short paper with simple primary school mathematics, proved, before they had been physically proven to exist, he proved mathematically that something like atoms had to exist just by looking down a microscope. Whereas you and I go, oh, look at all that jittery stuff, right? So that's my favourite story, that asking the question. And so I do these school Q&As, and the kids just come out with such deep questions. I'm going, don't know, that's good, don't know. Look, Ruben Meerman might be able to help you with that. Oh, I know somebody who can help with that. And I'll put them onto a mathematician or a physicist or or Zoe. I did one yesterday, and a few of the questions were evolutionary ones. And I said, this is outside my range of knowledge. Go straight to Zoe Keane. Here's her email address, right? So that's my favourite story. Einstein looks down a microscope, sees stuff jittering around, casually proves that atoms exist about 10 years before we actually physically discover them.
Because he followed his curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Baden, thanks for your question.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for that. That was great to hear.
And Dr. Karl, we got a question earlier about bumblebees and how them being able to fly almost goes against the laws of physics, right? And someone's texting in saying, to answer your question about bumblebees, their weight is not proportional to their wings in nature. Some species use certain frequencies that help them to levitate, so the small wings creates a vibration. Is that true? What's the deal?
That's part of it. And they've got to do this complicated twisting the wings backwards and forwards. And I think with the hummingbird, for them to be able to hover, it's like them drinking a full-size can, like for you and me, every 9 minutes to get enough energy of a fizzy drink full of sugar. And they've got 15 spoonfuls of sugar, and they're burning up energy at that rate. And in fact, we're getting off topic here, but with the birds that do the hummingbirds, they can actually be burning up so much energy when they fall asleep that they might run out of energy during the night and die. So they have to... This whole energetics of animals and their size. That's a lovely comment. Thank you so much. Who was that person?
They didn't leave their
Put
name.
your name in there so we can say how lovely you are.
So we can give you that credit. We got Joel in Tamworth here. Joel, you got a question about yawning.
Yeah, so I just had a quick question regarding when humans yawn, they tend to mimic like a person will mimic it afterwards and yawn back. But when your dog yawns, you don't tend to do the same thing. Why is that?
Now, do you have a dog?
Yeah, I've got 2.
Okay. You don't catch the dog yawns, but the dogs don't catch your yawns?
No, so I don't catch the dog's yawns more than anything.
Okay. Right. So firstly, we talked about earlier at the beginning of the show about these mirror neurons, and you don't really get your mirror neurons triggered from the dogs who are just lying around bludging, waiting for the next tin of dog food to come at them. So we're not wired for it, and their dog yawns might look slightly different. And now, if you do have, there have been cases where people have a very strong bond with their dog, and then they can catch the yawns. And so I was talking at a cat and dog show with a person whose job it is training dogs for TV. And just off the record, they said that Kelpies are the smartest dog. Okay, I didn't say that. I'll get into trouble because everybody say their dogs are smartest. And then she was telling me that sometimes she'll think, I want to try a new routine. I'll see if I can get them, there's two of them, to jump onto the stool. And before she can even begin to make the gesture, the dogs have jumped onto the stool. So they're reading her subconscious gestures. So next time I'm going to run into her, I'm going to have to ask her, because she's very empathetic one-on-one with her dogs. They're reading stuff that she's thinking before she even does a gesture of, hey, doggy, jump on the stool. So I'll have to ask her if they can catch the yawn. So dogs can catch human yawns sometimes, and humans can catch dog yawns. So maybe we need to set up some expensive counselling for you so you can go more in love with your dogs.
Some experiments, yeah.
Yeah, no, well, perfect. Thank you for that.
Okay, so try the mirroring thing, stare in their eyes a lot, and do. I don't know what the right way is. We need a dog psychologist. I'm out of my depth here.
I know. Dog psychologist. I love when we get an animal psychologist on. We've got Trent in Bundaberg. Trent, what's your question?
Hi, Dr. Karl, Dr. Lucy. Huge fan.
Oh, we love you too, Dr. Trent.
Oh, Dr. Trent, my life is complete. Thank you.
It's there on the podcast forever. Lay it on us, Dr. Trent.
I've been thinking about acceleration due to gravity, and I've always been told that it's independent of the mass of the object once you sort of take wind resistance out of the equation. And so I was thinking, if you were to, like, hypothetically, if there was another Earth-size, Earth mass object right next to us, so we've got an acceleration of 9.8 meters per second.
Yeah.
So there would be the same acceleration for the other Earth. So would that mean that the acceleration due to gravity would be double that? What's that, like 19.6 meters per second?
Okay, so the Earth is about 12, we'll call it 12,000 kilometres across, 13,000, right? So is the two Earths just sort of kissing each other at a single point and you're standing off to the side a bit?
Oh, well, if they were, I don't know, a couple hundred meters away from each other.
Okay,
with the
same
acceleration,
thing.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so they're fairly close. It's not the case that the other Earth is orbiting around our Earth just above the surface. Is it just sitting there stationary, relative to us? Okay, well, so basically you would feel the Earth's gravity pulling you down towards the centre, but you'd also feel a sideways pull. So you'd be sort of leaning at a 45-degree angle between the two of them, and you'd feel this. You wouldn't feel double gravity, but you'd be feeling a lean.
But
however, go on. Yeah,
would the two Earths be falling towards each other at like double our normal speed of acceleration?
Well,
due to gravity?
If they're touching. Oh, hang on, wait a sec. Would they fall towards each other? I'd have to do the physics equations on that. I'm not fast enough. Where are you, Michael Wheatland, person who can solve these Friday crosswords? Okay, no. So, but if they're just kissing each other, if they're just touching each other, you'd be pulled equally towards both of them if you're the same distance away from both of them. If one of them, if you can just reach up and touch the other Earth with your hand, assuming they don't squash, which they would and all that sort of stuff, you would be attracted to both. So, but if they were falling towards each other, would they fall at twice the speed? Can't answer that. Failed. Next question. Oh, and if they were combined into one sphere but the same size, you would feel double the gravity. If it had the same size but double the mass, you would feel double the gravity.
Yeah.
That would have be. But if they also increase in size, then the surface of gravity weakens a bit. It depends on how much bigger it gets.
Right. Yep.
This is a really good first-year question. I hope somebody does it for first-year physics for the students. It'll tangle their heads into knots.
Okay, we've got Ash in Meanjin, Brisbane. Ash, you got a question
Dr.
about
Ash?
ants.
Ants.
Karl, Lucy, legends, big time listener.
Dr. Ash, love your work, everything you've ever done, everything you ever will do.
Thank you. I know the last one's pretty deep. This is a bit deeper of a question. Why don't ants die or go unconscious or have any effect when you flick them?
Okay, so if you imagine that a human is falling from a building, during fall they're not feeling any acceleration. And if they were to have a glass in one hand and tip it sideways, the water wouldn't fall out of the glass. it'd stay there, falling with them at the same speed. If they had a glass and turned upside down, the water would just fall with them at the same speed. And then when they stop, you have high G-forces. So if you're in a car accelerating as hard as you can around a corner in a Formula One type car or high-end sports car, you're getting 1 G. So if you weigh the mythical 72 kilograms, you get force sideways also with 72 kilograms of push. That's 1 G. What we've found out is that according to experiments related to Murphy's Law, and I forget the name of the doctor who helped invent back in the late 40s the first seatbelt, we've found out that the limit that the human can withstand is 40 Gs. So we've seen this happen in car crashes. And what happens if you're falling out of a building, then suddenly you stop when you hit the ground, is that your skin pretty well stays where it is, but the bones move down and suddenly stop. The heart moves down, and what happens is the aorta, the big pipe, the diameter of your thumb, coming out of the heart, it gets torn off.
Yep.
And then it leaks blood everywhere inside, and then you die very soon after that. With ants, they also will be affected by acceleration, but let me point you towards a wonderful picture of a golf ball being hit by an iron club. Like a little tiny iron club on a golf stick. And when the photo is amazing. The golf ball, normally you think of it as a round thing. It just distorts and wraps itself around the head of the golf club. It actually distorts, and then it springs back to its shape and then bounces back off the iron head. Notice I said the iron head. You might think your fingernail is stiff, but when you push on it actually bends a little bit. So when you flick the ant, you might be thinking, oh, my fingernail is fixed and hard and rigid and not moving, but no, it's not, like the golf ball. So it will bend a little bit, and the ant will bend a little bit. But if you were to have, say, something like steel or something that was really rigid, or even more rigid than steel, like carbon fibre, and then flick an ant, you could give it such a high G-force that the internal organs would move around and mush and tear off. But in general, your flick with your fingernail is not enough to crush the ant because your fingernail's not that hard, and you wouldn't do it anyway. You just send them flying off into the air. But you shouldn't do it because it's kind of one of nature's creatures. You've got to be kind to them.
Yeah, right. No, good on you. I've asked many professors that question, and they haven't been able to answer it. So that's good to know, mate.
Okay,
I won't go flicking it with metal rulers, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, that's good. You've achieved enlightenment. You won't flick them with metal rulers. That's a good boy.
Good, Ash. We got
Thank
Jep
you, Dr. Ash.
in Geelong before we get to a song. Jep, what do you want to know?
Yeah, hi, doctors. My question is, I've noticed when I go for a bike ride or run early in the morning on my way to work and get my core temperature and heart rate up, I don't then notice the cold. Like I can cognitively tell the weather is cold or hot, but it doesn't seem to bother me. And then that sort of weans over the next couple of days. And I was wondering, is it physiological or psychosomatic?
How often do you do this exercise? Is it like once a month, once a week, once a day? Most days. Okay, right. Okay, so when I go to jump in the ocean for a swim into the pool, I'm wearing a T-shirt and my cozies and a towel, which I wrap around my top because it's bloody cold in the middle of winter. I'm going down there thinking, oh, God, this is cold, it's cold, it's cold. I jump into the water, but I'm wearing a cap, so the ice cream headache isn't that bad. And I do my laps and I come out, mate, and then I'm walking back in virtually the same temperature, but this time I'm not wearing a T-shirt, I'm not wearing a towel, I'm just wearing my swimming cozies. No, it doesn't look good. And the wind is blowing on me, and I don't feel cold. And that's what's happening. It is not psychosomatic, it's actually physiological. So you've got in your blood, which is about 5 litres, you've got about 2.5 litres of water. And when you do exercise, some of the 40 or so litres of water in your body, on top of that water in your blood, shifts into your bloodstream. You actually get more salt water in your blood, and that helps improve your sweat response and your cooling. So you get earlier onset of sweating and more efficient evaporative cooling. And so what you're doing is you're training yourself into this. Now, a little detour here. It just came through this week that if you, as an older person, that's being anybody over the age of 25, if you've got your heart responding rapidly to exercise, then that's good. So if you go and do a bit of running and your heart rate goes really high and then it drops down really quickly, that's good. But if it comes up only slowly and comes down slowly, things are not looking so good for you in the future. And what you're doing by pushing yourself into exercise is you're training your body into this, my heart rate will speed up and then slow down. So one thing that's happening is you're getting that acute acclimatization to heat via the increased blood volume. Then you're also, with your hypothalamus in your brain, you're adjusting your thermostat. So when I'm walking back from the pool and the wind's blowing on me, I feel like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Right? I don't look like it, but nevertheless. And so you're getting some of that. There is some of this sort of psychosomatic thing, and people will start saying it's the endorphins and dopamine and serotonin. When anybody claims anything is caused by endorphin, dopamine or serotonin, just switch off your brain and try to memorize your 10 times tables, because it's just mostly dumb. But you do get this delayed post-exercise effect. So because you said that you're doing it most days, it lasts for day after day after day. But if you did it once a week, it would fade away. But if you're doing it all the time, that means that as winter is coming across us here in Australia, you will save money because you don't have to wear so many clothes in winter because you're warm from your exercise.
Correct, yes.
Damn,
but
so
the rest
many
of my family
benefits.
isn't.
Gently encourage them to go for a swim with you or whatever the exercise is.
Yep, perfect.
Thanks, Jeb.
Thanks, doctors.
Thank you.
Now, Dr. Karl, we were talking about dogs yawning earlier and sympathetic yawning.
Yep.
Erin texting in saying, dog psychologist, dogs yawning is typically a stress response, not as much as tiredness as it is in people. As far as I'm aware, dogs don't catch each other's yawns, but if dogs are stressed at the same time, they could both be yawning.
See how you learn something from a dog psychologist that you don't know?
That's it. Someone texting in saying, I'm a sheep farmer and I catch the yawns when the sheep yawns. Same with the Kelpie working dog. Yes. And someone else, as soon as the caller mentioned yawning, it made me want to yawn. Humans are weird. We're all just a bunch of empaths, aren't we, Dr. Karl?
Given half a chance, we'll all love each other very much.
We've got Luke from Port Pirie here. Now, Luke, you've got a question which I've done this many times, but if you want to explain it for us.
Yeah, hi. I know it's a strange question, and I've done it a million times as well. I just wanted to know, when I put a permanent marker on a whiteboard, why I can rub it off with a non-permanent marker.
Yeah, it's like you put the non-permanent marker over the top and then you're able to wipe it off. Karl, a lot of teachers use that hack, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's something that we were taught when we were in primary school, to not get in trouble. So I'm just curious if there's a scientific reason behind it.
Well, if you call chemistry science, yes. Okay, I'm being mean to the chemist because the physicists rather arrogantly claim that chemistry is just the physics of the outer electrons. No, it's not. So permanent markers, they're carrying a pigment, which you want to have ending up on the whiteboard. They're carrying pigments and they're in a solvent. And so the solvent typically might be alcohol, and then you write on the whiteboard, the alcohol evaporates off and the pigment is there and it's stuck there. Whiteboard markers, which are not permanent, they use that solvent, but they have an extra thing. In addition to the pigment and the alcohol goes and the pigment's there, but around the pigment is an silicon or an oily chemical that wraps around the pigment and stops them from adhering tightly, molecule by molecule, to the whiteboard surface. Right. And so then you can wipe it off. So what happens is that the permanent marker is there on a whiteboard. You put on your whiteboard marker, it redissolves the pigment, and then the oily compound in the whiteboard marker lifts both the inks, the one that you just put on there and the permanent marker, off the surface, and then you wipe it off, the mixture of both inks come off. This normally works better on smooth, non-porous surfaces like whiteboards or glass or glossy tiles or laminated plastic. If you're doing it on wood, forget it. It's sort of there forever.
I'll keep that in mind. I won't mark any wood, but it's surprising that there's enough of that chemical in the non-permanent marker that it is able to take off both the permanent and permanent.
I'd never thought of that.
Thanks, Luke. We got Muppy in Parramatta. Muppy, what's your question to close us off?
I was just wondering, because sometimes my husband and I have arguments over what colour something is. And so I'm wondering if it's that we perceive the colour differently or it's just that we've learnt the colour differently.
On average, we humans can pick up light, and I'm going to mention the wavelengths, which are between 0.4 and 0.7 of a micron. A micron is a millionth of a metre. A hair about 50 microns thick. So it's maybe 1/100th the thickness of a human hair is a wavelength of normal light. So it's got all of the colours from blue at around 0.4 up to red at 0.7. And we have, on average, 3 sets of receptors optimised at 4.44 of a nanometre, 0.52 and 0.57, and they're called blue and green and red. About 2 or 3% of males, or 10% depending, have got the blue sensitive receptor, but they don't have the red or the green. They've got one but not both. And they're what we call red-green colourblind. And for those people, traffic lights have got a little bit of blue in the green colour, so they can see this blue light and they think, okay, that's supposed to be the grid. They know about that. And we've found more and more people women usually, who have got 4 colour receptors. But then it changes with life. So if you have a cataract, an opacity of the lens in one eye rather than the other, that will change the colour slightly. And so some of the French painters started going to different tones as they got older. And then I've always had one eye a slightly different colour receptor from the other. So I look at colours with the left eye and the right eye and thinking, yeah, they're slightly different.
Wow, that's interesting.
Thanks, Muppy.
Thank you, Dr. Muppy.
All right, Dr. Karl, that's you and I wrapped for another week. I'll see you next week.
Peachy keen, catch you then.
And that's it. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Science with Dr. Karl. And we want to know if you're in the Science with Dr. Karl fam. Make sure you like, subscribe, and you can leave us a review. You can let us know what you think via Apple Podcasts, but also via Triple J's YouTube channel. You can listen on YouTube and keep the conversation going in the comments. Hell, maybe you've got a question that you want to drop in there too. Please send it our way. My name is Lucy Smith. This episode was produced by Josh Brennan, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.
Dave Marchese here from the Triple J Hack team. Hey, if you love Dr. Karl's podcast like I do, you might enjoy the Hack podcast as well. Each day we bring you the news that matters to you, from the latest science on climate change to what's happening in politics and news around the world. The Hack podcast. It's your daily fix of the news you need to know. Get it wherever you're listening now.